Welcome to the Financial Planners South Africa podcast, a show dedicated to driving the positive evolution of financial advice, specifically in South Africa. To join a global community of financial advisors, sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice, head to xyadvisor.com. Portfolio Metrics is thrilled to bring you this podcast in support of our common passion, people, and the evolution of wealth management. Our global business links precision investment management to expert financial advice through partnerships and technology. Portfolio Metrics is an authorized financial services provider. AssetMap is a proud sponsor of this podcast. Are you looking for the next big thing in advisor technology? AssetMap is used by thousands of financial advisors to help create more meaningful conversations with clients. See for yourself how AssetMap is leading the next phase of financial advice delivery. Learn more at asset-map.com/Louis for a special listeners discount. This episode is proudly brought to you by Alan Gray. They say it's important to live for today. Although that might be true, we can't forget to plan for tomorrow. There's a lot of it left, after all. Alan Gray is an authorized financial services provider. Visit www.alangray.co.za to learn how we build long-term wealth for clients. Welcome to another episode of Financial Planners South Africa. Today I have in the studio with me Kobus Kuhn. Kobus is a certified financial planner, the founder of North Financial Services, and a YouTube celebrity running the Slice of Finance YouTube channel, which we'll delve into just in a little bit. Kobus, thank you so much for joining me today.
Louis, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be part of this show.
It's a very exciting time when you leave your secure job to start your own financial planning practice. And if I understand it correct, you've been a financial planner for the last 11 years. And so before we get into building a business, give us a little bit of a background of how you got into this profession we call financial planning.
Sure. Louis, I think back in the days, my father used to be a financial planner at Sanlam, like in the 1990s. And I think it was always in my blood. So I think when I started off in the grown-up world, I always wanted to be part of a business, be a businessman, and I had really a passion for finance. And I started out as a car salesman, which didn't turn out pretty well. No, I wasn't the best salesman there. But then I got the opportunity to start at the previous company where I worked at. And it all went well from there. It was I started off by doing medical aids at the previous company. So I wasn't really, didn't have much exposure in terms of financial services. It's just one part of the business. But I loved it. It was really something I felt comfortable with. It felt home to me. So
I want to talk a little bit about the medical aid part. You mentioned now that you started off in this practice, and you can tell us a bit of what that looked like. But oftentimes financial planners steer away from medical aid. How did you manage to put that part of someone's financial planning picture, and why do you think that was so successful?
I think like medical aids is one of those hidden gems. It's something no one wants to do because, I mean, to be honest with you, if you do add that service as a financial planner, it's not something you're really rewarded in terms of financially. The fees are very limited, but what it did do for me is it opened up so many opportunities. It is something that, I mean, everyone needs at the end of the day. And to be honest with you, I think most of my biggest clients came from medical aids. So it was just such a wonderful door opener when you sit down with a client. I mean, when you go through a medical aid, there's such different various aspects you look at, and it's a conversation starter. If you talk about the critical illness side, oncology, cancer, you dig into a bit, where does your critical illness, where do you have that in place? And the nice thing about that is you work with the whole family. So you work with the husband, the wife, the kids. You automatically form part of the family in that sense. So it was a wonderful opportunity for me to start off with that. I think that's kind of where the basics why I learned about financial planning in terms of when you do a needs analysis, because you really have to find out what it is the client needs. I know it sounds simple, but at the end of the day, you have to find a solution for a problem. And there's a couple of different options you have to look at when you sit down with the client. But it is something, it's always something very expensive. No one wants to pay for it, but they want maximum benefits. So it really taught me a lot about financial planning in terms of the analysis, what you do with the client in a very limited sense. But I think that was the foundation for me. Yeah.
Kobus, those early days where you might have seen your first couple of clients and talk about their medical aid, what stands out for you from those first discussions? Was it very easy for you to start getting into it?
Oh, geez, I remember I sat down in my parents' lounge, and I studied all the brochures of the various companies. So I think, yeah, it was something, when you start out with something new, it's always a challenge. You're always scared that you might not say something that you had to say to the client, something, especially like in medical aids. You might not know that there's certain limitations or co-payments. If you miss something, they'll hold you accountable. So I think, I started out with friends and family, I think like most people do. So, yeah, I think I did my research pretty well when I started out. Geez, I really went through those brochures.
I'm wondering, do we always need to know everything, or is it just you need to be a little bit more informed than the client so that you can guide them?
Yeah, I think, if you start off, I think that's the thing. When you start out with these type of things, you'll get a question from a client and you don't have a clue what it is. So that's how you learn. The more mistakes I made, the more I learned.
It's such a great place. And, we have a similar story also starting out looking at medical aid. And what I found is that you almost become branded, hey, this is the discovery guy, or this is the guy that knows about medical aid.
Exactly.
How did you bring that kind of branding part into it, that, it's not just, we don't only look at medical aid, or was it okay to be a medical aid specialist?
It's difficult because that thing sticks, eh? Until today, I have clients phoning me and they want medical aid specifically. It's really something, especially in a smaller town as in Kimberley, it's something that no one really did here. So I really became well known for the person that you come to when you do want to get a medical aid. So that was I think one of the most challenging things when I started out doing not just medical aids, but a little bit more, looking at investments, looking at doing a holistic financial analysis for a client. So that was kind of a mind shift. It was a difficult thing, yeah.
Kobus, at what point did the YouTube channel come about, and what was the catalyst for that?
I think a couple of years ago, I just realized that there's no one really doing any education on finance on YouTube. And I just realized, look, this is where I spend a lot of my time, and I might as well try my best and see if I can do it as well, and put my own spin on it. So there wasn't really many people doing it back then. And that's when I thought, look, I'd rather get in one of the first doing it than later.
This kind of concept of almost the first mover advantage, just
exactly.
Breaking down the barriers and start moving. Why do you think other people hesitate to do that, specifically when it comes to video?
I think it's a challenge. When I started doing the videos, I can't tell you how many times. If you look at my first couple of videos, it's very rushed. So you learn a lot by doing it. I don't think many people they're a bit camera shy, because it's difficult. If you sit down in front of that camera, it's just a different feeling. So I think it's. I think it's not, I don't think everyone enjoys doing it. And you know what? It takes a lot of time writing content. So it's one thing writing the content, it's another thing filming it, and then it's another thing sticking it together. So it's a lot of work. I think it might be more work than, you know what? I think people start with it and they realize it's a lot of work and then they just stop. But it's daunting if you start off sitting in front of a camera. And I don't think a lot of people know they can do it. I think they think they need all the professional equipment. And, today we sit with smartphones that's ridiculously capable of whatever you want to do. So you don't actually need professional equipment. And I think that's what keeps a lot of people from doing it. They say, look, I need this camera. I need this before I can start. I mean, I was guilty of it myself. I said, look, I need this before I can do that. And that's nonsense. Start off with what you have. Rather do something which isn't necessarily perfect, but just start. So that's why I started.
And then how did you keep going? What fueled you to carry on doing this?
I wanted to build up consistency, and that was one thing that I found pretty difficult. Especially, I wanted to do a video a week, but that became pretty difficult. Especially if you want a certain level of content you want to deliver, it takes a lot of time to write that content. But it was something I didn't want to stop. I got the momentum. I got people talking, and I think if I just would have stopped then, I just would have lost the momentum now. So I did a lot of groundwork and a lot of research. So I just couldn't stop. I mean, with the time I spent learning about how you edit videos, and it would have been a waste. So
almost too deep into back out now.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think at the end of the day, later on it became a bit fun as well. And I think that's when a lot of people also talked a lot. During lockdown, for example, I introduced a character because I needed to sit down and discuss something with someone. And you can't speak with anyone in lockdown, and I just wanted a guest. So I created a character called Gert, which is it's just a piece of carton, just a box. I cut out the Gert, and I made a couple of expressions, and I had a conversation with him. We had laughs. I taught him a bit about finance. We had fun. He's a good friend of mine, and we don't always get along together. But yeah, it's fun.
One of your videos had Gert in a serious accident. And I'm curious, where's Gert now? Has he recovered?
Yeah, give me a second.
For those of you that can't see, Gert is joining our conversation. Yeah. Brilliant. You will never be lonely again, Kobus.
I think, you know what? Gert was a nice introduction to the channel, in the sense of it was someone that everyone can relate to. I mean, a lot of people, they know nothing about finance, but they're interested. They want to know, but they're too afraid to ask. They feel they might look stupid in front of their friends for asking. And this is what was a nice thing. It was someone that's relatable. It's someone that's clueless about finance, but wants to get his things together. Yeah. So with regards to the accident that Gert had, that was something. I always liked the idea of guerrilla marketing, because you don't always have the funds to push into marketing or a massive marketing campaign. So you have to use what's been given to you. So if you can be creative, it's a wonderful tool. I mean, back then, I got the newspapers involved. I got the medical services involved. I made a big thing about it. And it made the papers. it was crazy because we did it in front of my previous office, and that was on one of the main streets in Kimberley. And I mean, people drove by. They you know how curious people are when it comes to an accident. It worked wonders. So yeah, so that was one of my public stunts, I guess, and one way to introduce Gert to a lot more people. Oh.
It's not often that, financial services or anything financial planning goes viral. So when you make the newspaper and people actually say, hey, this is interesting, I want to know a little bit more. I want to know, where does this gift come from to break down complex things, to simplify it, and to help people? Where does that come about?
I think I've got very critical friends. So when I explain a certain topic, I've got this one friend. He'll always tell me, "Kubi, no, this is too difficult. No, people won't understand this." So I have to break it down even further and further. My dad used to say, when you explain something, you have to explain it to someone like he's a 5-year-old. So. And I think finance specifically, it can be a pretty morbid topic, and it can be there's a lot of jargon. It's over the top. It can be too much. So I think when it comes to finance, I really wanted to simplify it to the base, to the fundamentals, and hopefully I did something right.
Absolutely. And you've made it even a little bit more approachable and a little bit more fun. There's something to be said for someone to say, hey, I want to know a little bit more here. This sounds interesting to me, not just scaring me into buying something.
Yeah, I mean, specifically when you do specifically YouTube videos, you've got to grab their attention. I think the stats show you've got to grab their attention in 7 seconds. If you don't, you lose them. So you have to do something really out of the ordinary, different, and something that grabs your attention. So that was the idea when I introduced Gert, and I guess with all the other videos as well. I try to add a little bit of fun to it because finance can be boring. So who wants to look at a finance video unless you make it exciting? So that's why I always try to add a little bit of humor in it. That's just my personality. I love laughing, and I want to introduce that to my videos as well. I want it to be approachable, fun, exciting, and easy to understand.
So now you've built up a bit of a following. You have this channel. It's some of it's gone viral. Is this attracting the right client to your practice, or was that not your ultimate aim by doing this?
So when I started out, I think the aim kind of slightly changed over time. So when in the beginning I started out, and it was pretty general basics of finance to everyone. But as time went on, I wanted to make it a bit more specific. But in terms of approaching the right audience, it certainly got the right audience, but it also, you also have a lot, because my YouTube is my WhatsApp sometimes just flooded with a lot of people asking they want to invest, they want to buy shares, and it's not something I specifically do is buy and sell shares for clients. But I made a video about it. One of my best top videos is one about how do you buy shares, or how to talk about a bit about explaining the concept of shares. And that's something a lot of people, I guess, Googled, and that video came up quite often. So that's something that's you don't necessarily get the right people. So I think when it comes to YouTube videos, and that's something I've learned over time, you've got to niche down. If you are a generalist, you will definitely get a lot of people asking you, and it floods you. I mean, and the unfortunate thing is, if you're on a YouTube, on such a platform, if you don't respond to those type of people, it leaves a bad taste in their mouth. It looks bad on YouTube. You don't rank as well. So it's something you have to do, and that can keep you busy. So rather niche down to the bare bone. I mean, go to where not a lot of people are, and then you'll get the right people. You'll get the right people you want to attract. So that's something I actually learned over time. Fortunately and unfortunately, there's a video that got a lot of views, and it's keeping busy. So
this concept of excluding some people and only working with a certain group, it can be daunting for financial planners because you're almost actively saying, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Clients, I'm not going to work with you if you're not the right fit. How do you go about defining who it is that you really want to work with?
I think it's someone that I really I can relate to, and someone that I can have a long conversation with, and we understand each other. So, for example, my target market or clients that I feel I can add the most value to is business owners. I feel it's something I am passionate about myself. It's something I on a continual basis constantly research about ideas, how you can save tax strategies, and it's relatable. So the clients I sit down with, we can talk for ages. So it's not necessarily that I can't service another client. It's just, I think my service is best valued for a business owner specifically. And I mean, that changes for someone else. Someone else can relate to a different sector or different part.
Kobus, how do you package your financial planning offering and the services you bring to the table to these business owners? What makes it so attractive for them to work with you?
I think so. I spent a couple of years creating or developing a process which is called my Compass strategy, and it's a unique. Well, I like to think of it as a unique strategy. So the idea of the Compass is, I mean, if you want to sail around the world, you kind of have to plan your journey. You have to be prepared for storms, and you have to be prepared if life takes a detour. And that the same is true with our finances as well. So within my process, I look at a couple of different aspects. We look at the individual, then we look at the family, then we look at the assets, and then we look at building the future. And they all integrate very, very well with each other. Specifically, when we talk about protecting your assets, that's where the business comes in. I found that there's a massive need for business owners when looking at contingency planning. I think it's something that's very often overlooked, and I think there's quite a lot of underused tools that's available that not a lot of planners use. So with my process, when I sit down with a client, I beforehand I'll send them a list of questions. It's 12 questions, and it's a little bit of a behavioral analysis. It gives me an idea: is it someone that's get to the point, or someone that's analytical? So that way, I have a bit idea in terms of how I can approach this client, how I should deal with this client, how they would like the information to be presented. And then I'll start with a process previously mentioned, which then opens up the door through the conversations I have with the client to either go into a lot more depth, either by doing an estate plan for them as an individual or looking at the business structures. So that's basically the process I follow when I sit down with the client. I try to offer a holistic process. I want to be part of the client's business in a certain sense. If they want to buy a new property or they've got a new business idea, I mean, I'd love if I can be part of that. If they can give me a call and say, Kobus, what do you think about this? How does that form part of my plan? It's not always the easiest clients, I think, to work with, but certainly the ones I relate most with.
I attended a webinar last week where the presenter spoke about financial partners, not just financial planners. And in your context,
absolutely.
you can almost become a partner in that business, guiding them through the ups and downs of whatever they might have to weather. Tell me a bit more about those 12 questions. I mean, in the industry, we often hear about someone wanting to do a personality assessment, but it's usually, Mr. Client, here's the link, here's 50 questions, and you have to spend 2 hours answering it. It sounds quite digestible, sending someone a short amount of clients, but giving you valuable information. What information do you derive from that? Does that include financial information, or is it really around the decision making?
Yeah, so this is analysis. It was created by Mitch Anthony, I believe. It was specifically introduced to gather more information, specifically with regards to finances. So, I mean, it's 12 questions. It's not going to give you a 100% correct answer, but it does give you an indication in terms of where the client's leaning towards. So I wanted something that is quick. I mean, you'd know yourself, clients, they don't want to spend time completing another questionnaire. I mean, we've got so many questionnaires already. So, I just wanted something quick for them to complete, and give me the most crucial information from that. So it specifically looks at finances. If it's someone that's analytical, someone that's get to the point, and that helps again if you do a risk analysis in terms of investing. So it all ties in pretty well with the whole process holistically.
Kobus, you mentioned that clients are often scarce of time, and I think specifically for business owners, it's often difficult for them to prioritize and make financial planning a priority. How have you managed to figure that out, or have you not yet?
I guess in a sense, yes, and again, and then no. I mean, if you can add the value to a client, and they believe in you, then they'll make time for you. So and I think it's important always also to remember, I mean, you can have a big client, and it's not necessarily that it's a good fit for you. So that's something it's something I also struggle with, because always if there's a big client, you'd like to attract a big client, but it's not to say that that client's going to be a good fit. You're going to struggle with that client. They're not going to allow you the opportunity. It's going to frustrate you. You're not going to be able to deliver the service that you'd like to deliver to the client. And at the end of the day, it's just a losing battle. So it's something I have to look at in my own practice myself. I've got to be more strict when it comes to that, because when you find a big client, it's difficult saying no, but it's not. Sometimes it's the right thing to say.
And inherently, as financial planners, we want to help people, right? And saying no to this client means that we're not able or willing to help them. In the early days of starting your business, how have you kept the focus on the important things? Like you mentioned now, saying no to clients that's not a good fit. What's been very helpful to someone, maybe listening to this, starting of thinking their own business or a couple of years in? Share a little bit of that with us.
I think do what you're passionate about. So do where you feel you can add most value. I think that's what I tried. I looked at my process. I looked at what I love doing, and that kind of just naturally happened. I tried to simplify things for myself. I always love integration, love technology. So I always try to make that part of my business. I guess, just simplify the whole business process, if that answers the question.
Kobus, you have a bit of a team around you as well. Tell us about the delegation and how you determined who does what.
Yeah, the team is a very important one. That's something I've got a PA that's she's really my right hand. We've come a long way. I think if she would have to find another alternative employer, I would really struggle. The thing is, if you find the right people in the right positions, it makes life so much easier. I mean, most of my clients, they even have a relationship with my PA. They don't even bother me with certain things. They phone her. I mean, it's so wonderful. For example, just the other day, a client sent me a message. She wanted my PA's Liesel's address because she wanted to send her something just to say thank you. And I thought, geez, you're not going to send me something. so if you find the right people, you can go a long way. Now Liesel started off with me in Kimberley, and her husband, he got an opportunity back in his hometown, and they packed up and moved there. And I was just lost without her. So I told her, look, could you still work for me, even if it's distant working? And it was something new. But it was just so natural. I think with the time we've spent together, we've really learned a lot how to treat each other and understand each other. I recently added two additional employees to the practice. One is a paraplanner, and the other one is just going to assist with the short-term section of the business. But they're all working from home. No one's working in my office, actually. So, which is something I think many people find strange. I don't have anyone working in Kimberley. So.
It's amazing that now it is possible to start a business from scratch where people are not sitting in the same office. What do you think we lose when we're not in the same office as a team?
Yeah, I do think there could be a bit of communication challenges. I think that's something I try to iron out, but it's not something you'll be able to iron out completely. If someone's in your office, it's very easy to discuss something with them. Yeah, I think and you also lose that human touch, and that's something I have to be very attentive to, because sometimes I'll wake up, I'll either SMS Liesel or give her a call, and I'll just start off where I picked off yesterday. It's like the day never ended. So it's important to never lose that human touch. I think that's important, because that's still part of the relationship, and it might feel that I think that there could be a bit of a lacking at times.
When you say human touch, Kobus, what do you mean by that?
It's just, just the familiarity. I mean, if we just picked off where we left yesterday, we're not necessarily so involved. Not that you have to be involved in your employees' lives, but it is something, I guess, that it's important for me. I don't want to be just like a slave trade. I want to offer something where people want to work. They want to work with me. They want to be part of something, and I just don't want to lose that. I guess that familiarity.
I hear you. Almost that person behind whoever is doing the work, to know that hey, they still have a family and they still have a life outside of work. That's true. Hey, we can be so focused on helping the client that we lose track of our own teammates. Tell me how you plan to cater for that in a remote type of office, or where people are not sitting in the same office. Like, what are the ways we can do as financial planners to look out for that, or maybe combat that?
I think structure is key, and processes. So what I've done is I've put a couple of workflow processes in place, and we have a frequent meeting every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, where we discuss what is happening, what has happened, not to lose track in terms of what's going on. because if you're in a practice, there's a lot of information circling. One client might phone, they want to do something, and it's just a lot of information. So to sit down with the team, everyone in one sitting, and say, look, let's have a Teams meeting and discuss what's going on. I think that is key. And then certainly the processes. If you don't have processes and structures in place, I think a lot of the information or can be lost in the whole process.
Absolutely. So Kobus, looking at, starting out this practice and getting your own FSP license, if you had a magic wand and you can change anything about that process, what would that be?
Oh, yeah, it was challenging in the beginning to start off getting everything in order. I think compliance was a bigger challenge than I expected. That caught me a bit off guard. So I think if I would do it again, I'd like to have someone sit down with me and explain that whole process from the beginning before I approach it. But I mean, when you're starting a practice, I can't say that it didn't go very smooth. Yeah, I think in terms of the transferring the whole clients, that was a big challenge for me. I would have liked more time to do that, but I guess that's life. That's the situation. I had to deal with it.
Yeah, well done. I think it turned out very well, and it's worthwhile sometimes reflecting, because we often hear people saying, oh, the FSCA took so long to issue my license, or I didn't have these things in place, but it sounded like you had your ducks in a row.
Yeah, I think it was, it wasn't something completely new. So the processes that I've developed, the structures in place, it all just went over to the new FSP. So it wasn't something completely new. It was basically just in the sense of, it is something clients are certainly, they don't like change. So if you tell a client, look, we're changing over to a new FSP, why are you doing this? Why? What about this? What about that? So there can be a lot of hiccups with clients because they just don't like change. So but it is what it is. It's that I don't think I could have done it differently. I would have just liked a little bit more time, but yeah.
You mentioned something interesting there around change, where clients don't like change, but at the same time, they often come to us saying, oh, shouldn't we be changing medical aids, or shouldn't we be changing plans? How do we balance those things and saying, okay, this is where we need to change, and this is where you don't need to ever change? How do you portray that to clients?
It's a difficult question, Louis. I think, if you have the right plan and structures in place, you can tell a client, look, this is your plan. I think if you're able to show a client what the implications are of the change and allow them then to make the decision and see what the consequences would be, I think that's the key. That would be the answer for me.
Very much kind of a coaching or guiding process to say, oh,
yeah.
Okay, well, this is the impact. Absolutely.
You're not gonna stop them from asking or requesting something to be changed. You can only show them the consequences of their decisions.
That's so true. Kobus, what are the skills financial planners need to invest in today? I mean, that can be me, that can be you, or anyone listening to this. What do you think are the critical skills we need to be investing time, money, and energy in?
I think I can't really say, well, I can say time. You have to learn, and I think it's a learnable skill. You've got to have more empathy when you sit down with clients, and you have to listen. Listen is key. I think when I sit down with a client, I rarely talk. I ask a question and I listen. And from that comes another question. So I think if you're starting out in this industry, if you can only ask a question and sit back and listen. Listen is the key for me. And then obviously the basics. I mean, if you're adaptable, if you are able to look at change, I mean, I would say that's also something that could be key. Look at different processes, look at different strategies that can be more effective, more better systems. I think in terms of something new advisors, which is key, I think they can also, like we've talked about earlier, I mean, don't throw away social media content. Be someone that can influence your peer group. They can certainly learn a lot more about social media and marketing, which is, I think, at the end there's abundance of wonderful material for free. So.
That's true. Hey, it doesn't even have to cost much.
No.
Kobus, what would you say to the Kobus that started out with the car sales, of how this journey planned out? Is this what you expected?
Yeah, no, look, I think that will caught me a bit off guard.
That's okay. It's something to ponder over,
yeah.
And just reflecting of this journey. I think it's one of the professions where we get to make the biggest impact in someone's life. And like you just said, just sitting down with someone, listening to their story, it is a very rare skill. It's something that people don't come across. They're used to being told what to do by the experts.
I think, Louis, if I can answer your previous question, I think when I started out in this profession, I was very proud of what I was doing when I just started out. And while I was you referred to as a broker previously, and look, I was very proud of it. And then then I learned about the stigmas of brokers. They just salesmen, and it's not someone really adding value. And that was something that really hurt me, because I was so proud of it. It was something I thought was very important. What was sad is I had to first go through the whole process of post-grad financial planning to really understand, look, I am really adding value. It is a profession, and it's not just you're not just a salesman here. Because that was something I never wanted to be. That's what I struggled with when I first started out in car sales. I mean, I remember one guy walking in. He literally walked in with a bag of cash, literally, and he wanted to buy this car, but I knew it was messed up. So I told him, look, no, this is not a right car for you. This thing is messed up. And he literally walked across the road. There was another dealership. He bought a car there. Geez, and my boss that stage, he was mad. But I just couldn't sell him that car knowing it's going to bring him trouble. I didn't want to sell anything. I wanted to solve a problem. And that was something that I only realized later on, that it is actually one of the most important professions. You're working with people's finances. You're working with someone's retirement. It is such a key role. You have to, and that's, I think if I could have started off and say, look, just go back to basics. What is the basic fundamentals people have to have? You don't necessarily have to make a fee out of everything. Tell the client, look, you have to have an emergency fund and a budget. If you don't have this, we can't look at life cover. We can't look at this. Because at the end of the day, if they don't have a budget, if they don't have an emergency fund, those policies will lapse. They won't be able to afford it if you didn't look at the basics. So I would say, to sum it up, I would say, look, Kobus, it is one of the most important professions out there. It is, you're solving problems, you're not selling anything, and really, really look at the basics for clients. put the basic fundamentals in place, and your business will be very, very strong.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. I can see how excited and energized you get when talking about these things. And it's wonderful that you get to live out your passion. It is so true. For anyone starting out in this industry, almost always there's this period where you doubt yourself. You start saying, am I really adding value? Is this what I'm supposed to do with my life? And it's wonderful to see your passion. And, this show is all about the positive evolution of financial advice. And this is exactly it. It's moving one step ahead, saying, here's a little bit more information. Tell me about that time when you went about getting your postgraduate diploma. What did that change in the way you delivered advice?
Oh, yeah. I think that was, before I applied for the postgrad, you do your research, you talk to a lot of people, you say, look, is this something that will add value? Because I don't want to spend a lot of time doing something that you already know. And it just taught me that there's so much more depth in our profession, in the service we can deliver to clients. It really taught me about really looking at a client holistically in the first place, and then digging into the structures. And that's what I loved. I love to solve a problem. I love the idea of minimizing unnecessary taxes by just making a couple of basic changes. And then there are also the creative part where you can say, look, what about this? You can actually structure your will like this, and then we can save on this and that. And the succession is so much greater for your loved ones. So that's something I think that changed a lot in terms of how I looked at a client's portfolio. When you start out, you do your RFP 1, 2, and 3, and it's the basics. But with that, you really digged into the deep end of estate planning, and I do love estate planning, and that also ties in well with the business owners, because a business owner will certainly have a large estate, and they will certainly need ways to minimize unnecessary taxes and look at the succession. So I wouldn't be the same if I didn't do it.
Well done for continuously investing and building this. I love the word you use, unnecessary taxes. You can pay taxes, but sometimes it's just unnecessary. Kobus, what's your vision for the next 10 to 20 years for North Financial Services?
That's an awesome question, Louis. So I'm very passionate about my business. It's something that I've really dreamt about my whole life. So at the end of the day, I'll work it from the perfect ideal plan, and then I'll work it back. So ideally, I'd like to be, look, I don't want to reinvent the wheel in anything, but I think I'll see what was successful with other practices, and I want to use that and add onto that. So with my business, I would like to have a national footprint. I would like to see a North Financial Services in every small town, in every major city, and I really want to build one of those household brands. Now, I think I know that is a very ambitious dream, but that is something I really aspire to. So in terms of the shorter, how I will get there. So in the next 3 years, I'd like to add another leg to the business. So I'd like to look at the accounting side and bring on board an accountant. So specifically with my client base, I sit down with a client, and they normally struggle with taxes. So that ties in well with structures. We can look holistically, really holistically, in terms of the client structure. Does that tie in well with his income tax? Does that tie in well with the taxes payable at death? Because, as a financial planner, we do tend to look at taxes at death, not so much income tax necessarily. So I'd like to bring on board that. And then I brought on board a paraplanner now. So ideally, I'd like this paraplanner to, in the next 2 years, be able to set up their own North Financial Services practice in their area. And then every 2 years, bring on board another paraplanner. So by introducing a paraplanner, I'll be able to introduce them to my process. I'll be able to show them how I do business, how I like everything to be done, how I like my clients to be treated. And then I want them to be able to do the same. So by doing that, I'll be able to have someone assisting me within the practice by the paraplanning side. And if they've learned enough, I'd like them to spread their wings and be able to build their own practice under the North umbrella.
Brilliant. It's wonderful to see how much you've thought about this. I did not expect such an elaborate answer. Kobus, this has been great to have you here on the show today. For people that might want to reach out to you or apply for that paraplanner job in the future, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Louis, they can reach me on my email address. It's kobus@northgroup.co.za, or on my website, it's northgroup.co.za, or they can even give me a WhatsApp on my number, 082 747 7477.
Thank you so much, Kobus, and I would urge everyone to like and subscribe to A Slice of Finance. Thank you so much for being here today. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for having me, Louis.